I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to the House Economic Matters Committee. Today is Wednesday, March 11th. We have 5 bills before us, the first being House Bill 1278. Delegate Shetty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chair Davis, Vice Chair Dumais, and friends and colleagues of the House Economic Matters Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 1278. This is a bill that will help our state address the plague that is known as robocalls. For the record, I am Delegate Emily Shetty, here to ask for a favorable report on this bill. Robocalls are the bane of most of our existence. Not only are they a nuisance, but they are dangerous and predatory and disproportionately harm seniors by ruthlessly targeting them with scams, fake charities, Social Security threats, and other false promises. What this bill will do is help cut off robocalls at the source by requiring VoIP service providers in Maryland to know who their commercial customers are and gather information from individuals who are using their networks to place thousands to millions of calls per minute. The information that they will be required to collect is the legal name and the name in which the individual does business, contact information, physical location of the primary place of business, the state and country of origin, the federal tax ID, and the nature of the business. The idea for this bill came from a 50-state agreement signed in August of last year by all attorney generals, including Attorney General Frosch, and most of the major telecom companies, including those who are signed up to testify in opposition to this bill. This bill merely codifies the Know Your Customer requirement that is outlined in that agreement. What it will do is assist the attorney generals who are attempting to investigate the bad actors by collecting contact information so that the AGs can actually pursue legal action against those who are using our networks to do harm. It is already illegal here in Maryland to place unregistered, unsolicited robocalls, and our laws are actually quite strong. Violation includes penalties ranging from $5,000 and imprisonment to revocation of telemarketing licenses and the ability to conduct legitimate business for up to 10 years. However, how can we pursue action against individuals if we don't even know who they are? That's what this bill seeks to address, and what the telecom companies have already agreed to do as part of the agreement in August of last year. To be clear, the telecom companies hate robocalls just as much as we do. Robocalls clog the networks. They make service slower for customers who are seeking to engage in legitimate business and personal activity. And to their credit, the companies have delivered on a number of the promises that they signed on to in the agreement. One major promise was that at no charge to consumers, the companies would begin to utilize call screening tools to better identify potential scam calls and note that on our personal phones. You might have noticed that when you get these calls, you see this likely scam note that comes up. I commend them for doing this great work and ensuring that all these calls are better able to be screened by all of us. This is a major step forward that has undoubtedly helped to protect seniors and others in our communities. However, we must do more to protect consumers from these calls, and requiring telecom companies to collect this information will be a powerful way to ensure that when a bad actor engages in this activity, they will be caught and subjected to Maryland's strong penalties. According to recent studies, Maryland ranked #1 as the state most bothered by robocalls in 2019, and victims in our state have actually lost $1.8 million just to the IRS impersonation scam alone as of January 31st of 2018, and I'm sure that number has grown since. As I've shared in this committee in the past, my elderly godmother was actually targeted by a crime ring of robocallers, and she lost over $150,000 of her life savings. So this issue is really personal to me. On behalf of each of these victims and the countless others who are subjected to unnecessary robocalls daily, I respectfully request a favorable report. Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, typically out of respect to my opposition, I usually stay, but I have to testify in another committee, so with your indulgence, I may have to leave. Thank you.
No problem. Patrick Halley, Sean Looney.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Sean Looney from Comcast, respectfully in opposition to this legislation, well-intentioned, and we are in violent agreement that we all hate robocalls. but there is no way we can do what this bill is asking or requiring us to do. And the memorandum of understanding is that we will do our very best to our best ability to identify if, in fact, we can find out who these folks are. I asked like 20 different people at Comcast, is there any way we can know who's making these robocalls? And we just can't. So it's a great idea. I wish we could identify them and better cut off the robocalls so I wouldn't be bothered at my house, but we just can't do it. And none of the telecom companies can do it. It's just not technically possible to do this. So for that reason, I request an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Sean, thank you for coming today. My question really is, but she's asking you to collect certain information. You can't do that either?
We don't know who makes robocalls.
No. The information that, to my understanding, is, the certain specific information from your commercial customers. You can't do that?
The way I'm reading the bill says that we collect information on companies doing robocalling, and we don't know who's doing robocalling.
But okay, so let's backstep it. But you do know, is it possible for you to get all this contact information that she's suggesting from each of your customers, or at least your commercial customers?
We could provide anyone, a database of every one of our commercial customers. You'll have no idea whether they're making robocalls or not. And
what about, use of bandwidth, things of that nature? I know there are certain determining factors that could increase the chance that these folks are using more than just, for regular day-to-day business. The amount of bandwidth that they use, the times that they call, things of that nature.
That would require us to monitor their calling activity, and we would have to monitor the calling activity of all of our customers. And I can guarantee you, especially after this work group meets on privacy and comes back, we're probably not going to be allowed. I don't think anyone wants Comcast to monitor each and every phone call that people make to determine whether that's a robocall or not.
And I appreciate that, but that's not what I was asking. I was saying bandwidth usage. I really was not talking about. And I only say this because it would be nice if we could do something more than we're doing. And I know you guys are doing a lot, but I don't disagree with the delegates' vision, because it's horrific. It's to the point now where my cell, I just don't answer, and I miss out on a lot of money because of it. So I know what you can't do, and I appreciate that, but it would be really nice if some of the opponents could tell us about what they can do, what we think we can do, how we could actually do something in Maryland to, stem this tide, because it's not getting better, it is actually getting worse.
Absolutely. We have heard from our customers. That's why we are trying to do things that, again, we guess via AI analytics that it might be a robocall, and we'll indicate to customers that it might be a robocall. Even then, we've had complaints because they'll say, hey, my realtor called me and they called from a different number and you identified it as a possible robocall and I didn't answer the call. So it's a very imprecise science. We're doing the best we can because we know our customers hate it and we want to keep our customers. So this is it's a war, and as each side escalates the technology, we're trying to stay ahead of the other side. But honestly, the person in Costa Rica or Thailand, they're not going to care about Maryland law on this one.
And one last thing, is it easy to determine who's calling from within Maryland and who's calling from outside of Maryland?
No.
There's no way of telling.
Especially if they're not our customer. If they are our customer and the call originates on our network, we may be able to determine that.
But that's what she's asking you to do, monitor your customers, though, correct? Not all customers. Not all calls that come through, but just your customers by this bill's design.
Yeah, and that is equally impossible to do.
You see where I'm going, right?
I see where you're going. It would be great if we could do it, and if there was some technology, and maybe there will be. I mean, maybe someone will invent a technology that could flag this.
No, just ask a question, Mr. Chair. I'll let you go. No.
Yes.
Delegate Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sitting here looking, and I hate these robocalls, okay? And I keep hearing you saying over and over again, there's no way, there's no such thing as, ain't no way, that you can, all of your customers that complains to y'all, first of all, let me ask this question. How many complaints you got? Do you have a number of the complaints that your customers have call you and tell you about some of these robocalls? You don't have a number, do you?
I could find that from our customer service people. I'm sure if they track that specifically as far as that kind of complaint, I'm sure I could get that data, or I'll ask for it if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, I would. And you said you want so much to make your customers happy.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm one of your customers. And so I want to be happy. Okay, so
I want you to be
I
happy.
want to be happy. So I want to know that your company is going to try, not say you can't do this, but try to find a way to stop some of these robocalls from your company, okay? Because you got a good company now. Your company about this. Is there any way can you just say we will try?
We are trying. I can say that with confidence. We are trying to get ahead of this problem, and we welcome any and all suggestions as to how to do it.
Okay, well, I'm going to see what you're going to do, because I'm going to monitor you. And then I'm going to call in and make sure I keep a number of all the calls that I get that I can't stand, okay?
Great.
Personally. Okay? Thank you very much, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is along the line of my colleagues. So are you suggesting, Mr. Looney, that this is an industry-wide issue, that if I were to ask, let's say, Verizon or one of your competitors, they would give similar answers? It sounds like it's very reactive, and that maybe it's safe to say there's no plan in place to really tackle this issue. It's almost like we don't really know how to deal with this or mitigate it.
No, we are trying to deal with this issue as best we can, but there are limits to technology and what we can do. So the only way you could conclusively do what this bill requires us to do would be for us to somehow, and I don't know that we can even do this, but we would have to monitor every phone call made in our network to determine whether that is a robocall or not. And I asked 20 different people at Comcast, and I'm sure Verizon asked their engineers and their people the same question. There is no technical way to determine that right now.
But there's got to be some ways that you guys are already doing something to mitigate the volume, right?
All we're doing, as I told Delegate Wilson, is we use AI analytics to say this may be a robocall based upon a computer model when we notice a certain pattern of calling. But even that is not 100% accurate, because if it's a little league, for example, that wants to send out a notice that the game has been canceled because of rain, and they have 200 kids that play on these teams, and if we were to flag that and somehow stop that, then the little league people would be upset with us for stopping their calls when they're saying, hey, all we're doing, we're calling people who asked us to call them to let them know when a game is being canceled. So there is no perfect technology yet. I'm sure there's some really smart people somewhere working on technology, but it's not there yet.
Well, thank you. I just want to say, I hope you sense the deep frustrations among legislators.
Yes.
And we hope you have some more proactive plans in place to instead of using the excuse of technological challenges. I think this is a widespread problem. Thank you.
Sean, I got a phone call this morning that says potential spam. How does that happen? Is that the artificial?
That's the artificial intelligence analytics. We look at, and again, I'm not an engineer, I'm a lobbyist, but we try to do the best we can using the technology we have on our network to say, is this potentially, and by the way, that could have been your wife calling from a business location that you wanted to get the call. But again, the technology is trying to do the best it can, and this was part of this memorandum of understanding. We said, using the technology available to us today, we're going to do the best we can to identify this. So that's why you see that. And we're doing the best we can with the technology available to us, but the bad guys have lots of money too, and like I said, this is like a war of attrition at this point.
And I'm sorry she's not here, because I would be interested in hearing her thoughts and your response to this later. Talked about this sort of national pact with attorney generals, and she said that companies, were you all involved with that conversation and that commitment?
I was not directly involved,
Not
but
you
I-
personally, was Comcast?
Yeah, Comcast is involved with that,
Okay.
yes.
And so what she's saying is that what this bill does is it takes the agreement that was made in that context and puts it into Maryland law. Is that your understanding?
Well, that's kind of true. What it does, the memorandum of understanding was to say, we as an industry will do the best job we can with the technology available to manage this problem. Well, this bill is saying, you have to do this right away and do this 100% fail-safe detection system, which we don't have, and we never made the commitment at the federal level with the AG memorandum of understanding.
So what did you mean in the commitment you made with that memorandum of understanding with the AG? What did you understand your commitment to be that you're putting into place?
Our commitment is to do the very best we can with available technology
Which
to
is-
manage this problem.
Can you give an example of
An
that? that's
example
different
is
from what
when
this bill
we
calls?
use our AY system, if we detect calls that might be spam, we notify customers of that to let them know, maybe you don't want to answer this call because it could be a potential robocall.
Okay, thanks.
Very much.
Thank you.
That concludes our hearing on House Bill 1278.